In today's Idea of the Day, I'd like to talk a little bit about radio as it stands today. Now, back in the day, my day, I was born in the 60s, oldies stations, and in particular in New York, we had CBS FM, which was our oldies station, 101.1 in New York, and they played music from the dawn of rock and roll, basically from, Bill Haley and Elvis all the way up to, let's say, late 70s. And then years later, they changed formats. Now, if you tune into CBS FM today, you're pretty much starting at the 80s. Now, think about that. Now, I'm not disgruntled about saying, well, the 80s aren't old. Believe me, they're old. They're 30 years ago. But the funny part about that is they've forgotten about 70s, 60s, and 50s. In other words, in, let's say, the New York market, for example, and I'm sure that this is definitely in other cities as well, but essentially in the oldies radio genre now, there is almost no place to hear Elvis. There's almost no place to hear the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Who. This is music of the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s. So I have no problem with the fact that oldies stations play the 80s. Yeah, it's 30 years old. But just a thought that there isn't a major radio station in one of the biggest markets in the country, probably in the world, New York City, that there's not a radio station that plays the Beatles or Elvis or the Who on a regular basis. That's almost a crime. Oldies should include 50s, 60s, and 70s. And if you want to argue and you don't want to have the 50s doo-wop in there, it's still part of the heritage. And if you're young and you just want to have a little bit of rockin', believe me, the Beatles in their day, they rocked. The Rolling Stones in their day, they rocked. Young people today aren't exposed to that kind of music, and it's kind of sad in a way. I mean, the Beatles, where do you find that on the radio nowadays other than satellite? No wonder people go into Pandora and streaming to listen to their music. I think that the traditional radio market is missing and doing an injustice. Maybe it's just about, dollars, who knows? But that's kind of my thing today. Oldies stations should be playing at least 70s, at least 60s, and hopefully some of the 50s. There was some great rock and roll back then too. And that's today's Idea of the Day. So there it is. That's today's Idea of the Day. Now, I put a brand new idea up every single day, and I need your support if you want to let these ideas spread around the world. So if you see a great idea, let me know in the comments. Share it with your friends. And above all, if you can, please subscribe to my new channel. Because if you do, I'll put a brand new idea up every single day. And some of them don't suck.